I speak 6 languages, and over the years, I tested countless methods to determine which ones actually work for me. I came up with a language learning blueprint I always use no matter which language I want to learn. Sometimes I have to adjust them a little bit because some languages need a slightly different approach, but overall, these are the methods I swear by. They actually work, and they are going to make you learn languages extremely fast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And now, if you're ready to take your language skills to the next level, let's get started. The first method I want to share with you is called shadowing. This is one of my favorite and most frequently used methods, especially at the beginning. Basically, what I do is I choose a video and I try to mimic the person speaking in that video. I try to match their pronunciation, rhythm, intonation, and at the beginning, I make sure that the video is not too difficult for me, that it's not too long. I love this method, especially at the beginning, because it helps me get comfortable speaking without having to think what to say. So it's the perfect middle ground between passive and active learning. You speak and you get used to speaking, but you don't have to think about producing your own sentences, which can be a bit challenging at the beginning. But it's also great for intermediate learners and even advanced learners. As I approach the intermediate level, I use it less and less because I naturally get used to the language and my pronunciation improves. But I still use it from time to time, especially if I want to practice speaking faster and sounding more natural, or if I want to work on a specific accent, then shadowing is amazing for that. This method is one that I swear by, and I use it with every single language. This is what I love about this method because sometimes, certain languages require a different approach, but shadowing can be used for every single language out there. So it's amazing, and if you haven't tried it already, give it a try. The next method is the bidirectional translation method created by Luca Lampariello. And this method is also one of my favorite methods. I'm going to explain it really, really fast, but if you want more details, more explanations, I'm going to link Luca's channel and his video about his method. But basically what this method is that you take a text in a language that you're learning and you translate it yourself into your native language or a language that you know really well. Then you wait a few hours or even a day, and then you translate it back into the original language. And what I love about this method is that it really forces you to think, and because you cannot translate everything word for word. So yeah, you have to think. It's a good exercise for your brain. But also when I use this method, I never have to memorize new vocab. I never sit down with a list of vocab and try to memorize it. I don't really know the whole science behind this method, but it's amazing. I never have to memorize words. And also you see grammar in context. So personally, I almost never do grammar exercises anymore because I use this method. I usually use this method all the way up to intermediate, so it stays valuable for a good amount of time. You can use this method with any text. I usually like to use a simile because they have so many dialogues. But you don't have to use a simile. You can use any text, any dialogue that you find, or even it could probably work with like a podcast transcript or just a longer text and article depending on your level. So you can really get creative and choose any text that you want. It's a very flexible method and it really stimulates your brain, which I love. So again, if you want the full explanation, I'm going to link Luca's video in the description, but I highly, highly recommend this method. The next thing I always do is I always learn the most common verbs / words, but not in isolation. I always start with the most common words. They're usually verbs and adjectives because you can really say so much with very little vocab. Verbs especially are incredibly powerful because there's a verb in every single sentence. So if you learn the most common verbs, let's say 100, then not only is your ability to speak going to improve, you're going to be able to talk about more things. Your listening comprehension is also going to improve because people use those words all the time. Traditional textbooks often give you very random word lists, especially at the beginning. I don't know about you, but I remember learning languages at school, and they would have us learn words like different fruits and vegetables or clothing, which do use them sometimes, right? But you use verbs and adjectives a lot more often. I remember when I was learning French, I had already passed my C1 exam, so I had this certificate, right? And I had already moved to France. I was at uni, and I remember going to the canteen with my friends. And because I skipped those words when I was learning French, I remember being at the canteen and holding up, I think it was like a fork or a knife. I'm not sure. But asking my friend, like, wait, what is this called again? And I literally had my C1 certification and I was studying at a French university in French, and that was the first time I've ever had to use the word fork or knife. So yeah, they're really not that important, and I cannot wait for someone to comment, you weren't really at C1 level if you didn't know how to say fork. Anyway, what I like to do is I like to print a list of those words and keep it on my desk. I never memorize them. As I said, I never memorize word lists. I like to keep them on my desk, and anytime I do a speaking exercise or I want to journal or anything, I can just look at that list and get inspiration, and over time they just kind of stick and you memorize them naturally without having to sit down and repeat them over and over again. This method is perfect if your goal is communication and not necessarily perfection from the very beginning, because those words let you communicate very, very early on. So give it a try, and I promise you'll be very surprised how much you can say and understand with a really small set of high-frequency words. Method number 4 is immersion/comprehensible input. Comprehensible input basically means watching something or listening to something that is a little bit above your current level. A good guideline is that you should understand at least 60-ish% and then the rest should be new. It's not a strict rule, but it's a useful benchmark. And I use immersion from the very beginning. Of course, when I am just starting out, I choose materials that are easy for me to understand. And then as I progress, I choose things that are more and more difficult. Once I reach the intermediate level, immersion becomes the foundation of everything I do. At this level, I kind of tend to ditch my textbooks and instead focus on listening and reading. And then my speaking and writing exercises are based on what I read and what I listen to. And also at intermediate, I try to mix in some native content, so I still listen to things that are made for language learners. But from time to time, I will listen to something or watch something that is made for native speakers. Then at advanced, I switch almost completely to native content. I'd say that 95% of what I consume is native content. The only time I really use learner-specific content is when I want to review a grammar rule or something like that. Then I will watch a video made for language learners. But other than that, most of the things I consume are things made for native speakers. So like movies, TV shows, podcasts, articles, books, stuff like that. This method is great because it works across all levels, but I find that it becomes especially powerful once you reach intermediate. The last thing I do is I train my active skills. So speaking and writing, and it's always built on top of immersion. After I listen to or read something, I often summarize it or give a review or just my opinion. If I am preparing for an exam, I will practice exam-specific formats like essays, articles. I also give myself prompts to talk or write about specific topics that I'm interested in. I really like to record myself. Again, I talked about this method countless times on my channel, so I'm going to go over it very, very quickly. But basically what I do is I pick a prompt, I hit record on my phone, then talk about that topic for a certain amount of time. I usually start with like 2 to 3 minutes and then slowly build up to 10 or 15. Then I listen to the recording, catch any mistakes that I made, any awkward pauses, and then I re-record that same prompt. What I also like to do is I like to use the same prompt in the span of a few weeks because it lets me see my progress, and it's incredibly motivating when you listen to the first recording from a few weeks ago and you can hear that you made like a few mistakes and there were awkward pauses or you mispronounced something, and then you listen to the more recent recording and you can see that there are no more awkward pauses, that you pronounce everything correctly, and it's incredibly motivating. So I highly, highly encourage you to give it a try. I also do writing exercises, but I'll be honest, I do them less often. I am not a huge fan of writing, and if I don't have to do it, I'm not going to. Unless I'm in a huge writing mood, then I might do some writing, but I'm usually not a fan of writing very long texts. I might do some journaling because I like to journal, or what I also like to do is I like to write gratitude lists. So that's a good exercise to try if you are like me and you're not very into writing, but you still want to practice a little bit. Alright, that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you would like a part 2, because now that I think about it, there are a few methods that I didn't talk about in this video. If you want more content from me, you can follow me on Instagram. The link is always in the description, but I'm also going to leave it in the comment down below. I'm active on there every single day. Let me know in the comments which method you are going to try first. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!